What's up, everybody? It's Bradford, your carnivore curmudgeon, and they say when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. But what do you do when people give you chickens? Well, in this particular case, I decided to smoke some chicken, then can some chicken soup, put it on a shelf for a rainy day in the future. Let me show you how I did that right here. So I'm just going to start by taking these chicken halves and salting them and putting some nice pepper and a little bit of garlic on them. Very light seasoning. Don't want to overdo it, but I do want the skin to get nice and crispy for later. Where did you get these chickens, my curmudgeon? You are asking. I heard you asking, so I have to tell you. Some friends of mine who bought their first batch of meat chickens this year um, very graciously gave me 4 chickens in exchange for giving them a helping hand with learning how to can chicken. So we spent the better part of a morning and an early afternoon canning some of their chickens so that they can have an additional way to preserve these chickens that they've raised other than just being in the freezer. We canned some chicken thighs and legs, and we canned some chicken breasts separately, and just enjoyed our time, other than the fact that it was miserably hot outside. And it was just a lot of fun. We took some time to, I taught them how to separate the chickens, how to, now these are not, I just halved these because they gave them to me whole, but I showed them how to take the leg off, take the thigh off, take the wing off, removed all the bones from the breasts. And it was just a really enjoyable time. And I appreciated them inviting me to be a part of it. So after getting the seasoning on these chickens, I let them sit for about 30 to 45 minutes to just kind of let that salt do its thing, draw some moisture out of the chicken skin. And then it was time to get them on the smoker and be kind of aggressive about the smoke part of this. So I've got the Camp Chef XXL Pro smoker, pellet smoker. I am not a competition kind of guy. I am a smoke my meat and go do something else while that's happening kind of person. So I love the set it and forget it sort of way this all works. And I got these chickens on here at 225 degrees to get started. And I think I put smoke level at 5. But I also added, in addition to the pellets, this this smoker has a little drawer where you can add some things. So I put in some of these apple chips for some additional smoke. And when you crank that little lever over there, it throws the flame to it and gets it going. Then you put it back down so that it smokes low and slow. About 3.5 hours later, I temped these, and they all temped at over 175 degrees. And so I pulled them out of the smoker so that I could start the process of letting them cool down so I could touch them, and then uh, cool down but not get completely cold because I want to be able to strip the meat off the bones. I started with the wings. Those are going to be set aside for a little snack time, but I am going to take all of the meat that I can off of the legs and off of the thighs for this chicken soup. And I got to tell you, the smell on this was just fantastic. All in all, it took me about 20 minutes to strip the meat off of these bones. And you can see I made a little separate pile of the skin. I'm taking the skin off. I don't want that in my soup, but I do want that smoky skin because I have a plan for it in just a little while. So now it's time to make the broth for the soup. And I like to make my own chicken broth. I buy some sometimes for convenience sake, but whenever I can, I like to make some stock and then keep it on the shelf. I can it, and then it's convenient and it's there when I need it. And to do that, my recipe is very simple. I take an onion and I cut it in half. I cut the ends off, but I cut the onion in half and leave the peels on. I cut the tips off of a couple of carrots and slice them up so that they can kind of open up and release their juices into the broth. Now, here's where, if you're a strict carnivore, yeah, I get it. There's vegetables in here. So, perhaps this is not for you. I suppose if you're extra strict carnivore, you wouldn't be eating chicken anyway, because apparently that's taboo amongst some of the more higher echelon carnivores out there. But you guys do you, I'll do me. And a couple of garlic cloves with the peel still on it. And the celery there was kind of rubbery, but I'm after the flavor more than the texture of that particular celery. And then that's where I put in a bunch of the smoked bones. I just stripped the meat off, and several slices of that chicken skin that's got all that smoky flavor. Some salt and some a little bit of pepper, and then I just fill this up to the line that in the Instant Pot. I'm using an Instant Pot here. You don't have to. You can slow cook this, but I would recommend you do it over about 8 hours. I filled it up to the maximum fill line, and then on with the lid, and I'm going to pressure cook it on high at an hour and 50 minutes. Seems to be the sweet spot for what I need and want. And while that's going, I'm going to stick all of my chicken into a bag, and I'm just doing this so that I can measure it. Well, I'm going to also put it in the fridge for a while because I'm not going to be canning this for a little bit. But I put it into a bag so that I can weigh it. And then I know I'm going to have 7 quarts. I got 54 and a half ounces. I just do the math with the calculator and figure out how many ounces per quart I'm going to be able to do. A little bit later, the Instant Pot let me know it was all done, so I took it out and strained it into a big bowl. And then this is just me. This is how I do it. I put all those chicken bones and scraps I just strained right back in the Instant Pot. I took a couple of chicken backbones that I already had in the freezer, tossed them in, and on top of the scraps that just got pressure cooked, and then a couple more of those chicken skins. And I just repeat the process. I fill it back up with water and let the whole thing cook again. Now, everything went into the refrigerator overnight, and I decided to can it the next day. And I prepped for the canning of the soup by making some piles of just a few carrots and something strange going on here. Well, I made some piles of carrots. I was supposed to make 7 piles because I can do 7 quarts at once, but I ended up in the end only having 6 piles. And let's see, what was it that happened that caused me to lose count? Carrot thief. Well, anyway, I made some piles. I sliced up some onions and then just did like maybe a tablespoon of onions per pile. I sliced up some celery, about the same thing, about a tablespoon. I didn't measure it, I just eyeballed it, but I know each one of those piles is going to go into my quart jars. And my quart jars are sitting in some warm water right now because all of this is going to get done not from complete cold because I've got this broth I've warmed up after pulling it out of the fridge, but everything's just going to be warm. So that way there's no shock to the quart jars or anything. Nothing's going to break. At least that's the plan. But before I filled them up, I did get my chicken out and I gave it one more quick chop so that they were in sort of more bite-sized pieces per quart of soup. I could have just left it like it is, but because it's all going to cook down. Then it was time to get it in the jars. So I just scoop up one pile, put it in the jar. I reset my scale there on the chicken for each jar so that it zeroed out, and then put in the appropriate amount of chicken. It ended up being between 7 and 7.5 ounces per quart jar is what it came out to. The math that I did with a calculator. After I got some of this into these warm jars, I immediately took it over to where my chicken broth is also just warm. It's not boiling like you might do with a hot pack for chicken soup. It's just everything is just warm. Did I say everything was just warm? If I didn't, everything is, just warm. Okay, then it's time to put the broth into the jars. And then, of course, after I get all the broth in all the jars, I took a rag with some vinegar on it. I wiped all the tops to make sure I didn't have any chicken residue or fat on the uh, jar rims so that I could make sure that gave it all the best opportunity to seal as possible. Then it's time to go into the pressure canner itself. You'll never guess what temperature this water is in the pressure canner as I'm putting them in. If you guessed warm, you've been paying attention. And now it's time to put the heat to it and bring this thing up to pressure canning temperature. So on with the lid I go. I've got it set up almost all the way to high. And once I get to 11 pounds of pressure, I put the weight on it and set the timer for 75 minutes. And that's all in the instructions with my pressure canner. You can find these instructions and pressure canning instructions all over the internet, and I would encourage you to do so. After it's done, I took it off of the heat and I just left it alone for about 3 hours before I even bothered to open the top. And always, always open the top away from your pie hole because you don't want to get burnt with that steam. Out they come onto a nice towel on your countertop. That's usually the safest and best bet. Protects your jars from a shocking temperature change, and it also protects your countertop. And they're just going to sit here until all of them, hopefully all of them, will seal. And you hear that little pop that makes you so happy. All of these did seal, but isn't it interesting that this picture right here was taken 5 hours later and the broth was still boiling bubbles. Now I had some extra broth because I did, 2 instant pots worth. So what I did is I took some and I put it in a quart jar just for immediate use. And then I took some other leftover broth and I just squirted it into this silicone mold. And what I have found in the past is these little chicken broth chips, I put them in the freezer and I let them freeze solid. And they're terrific for a number of different things. They make a nice addition if you just need a little flavor and a little bit of water. They're kind of concentrated, so they're quick and easy to toss into a stir fry or something like that. By the way, these also make great dog treats. They taste good, and when it's a super hot day out, it can be a nice little treat for your puppy. Well, that's it. That's how I made some delicious smoky chicken and smoky chicken broth and put it in a can for a day in the future. Now, maybe you have the ability to smoke and not can, or maybe you have the ability to can but not smoke. But whatever you have the ability to do, get in the kitchen and give it a try. And I know that this is not technically it's not technically a carnivore recipe, but I do make things for people other than myself, and it's easy enough to make it a carnivore recipe if you have the will to do it. Hope you give it a try, and if you do, drop me a comment down below and let me know what your results were. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.